This week on the Eldritch Lorecast.
Pretty Cool Role just have announced their video game.
Whatever the opposite of what you're asking for is, that's what you're getting.
As someone who has had both Kingdom Hearts and Warframe explained at me.
Is it fun yet?
The old reverse Robin Hood.
If it's taking money from the lesser and giving to the more powerful, then it's A-OK in the US system.
The transformed Grim Hollow Player's Guide has just been released in PDF form.
Oh, I took this class and now I have a degree on my wall and I am a professional dungeon master. No.
All that and more right now. I can't believe how much Ben is not going to go and watch Girls Fight.
Yeah, anyway. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Eldritch Lorecast, the #1 tabletop RPG podcast in all the realms. That's right. We are the girls five ever of tabletop RPG podcasts in Dael's estimation. My name is Ben Byrne. This is Dael Kingsmill, somewhere over that way if you're watching on YouTube. That's James Haig. That's Shawn Merwin. And Shawn, I'm going to start with you for some reason with this question. If there was a video game that you wanted to see made into a tabletop RPG, not a tabletop RPG made into a video game, but a video game that became a tabletop RPG, possibly one with a system that still that already exists, what would it be?
I thought about this. Every game I could think of was already a TTRPG or vice versa. And then I thought of Larian's Divinity. And I thought that might be a cool game / world / place to exist in, especially given the fact that Larian went on to do Baldur's Gate 3, did a great job there. And I think that would be fun, popular, and hit a sweet spot for a lot of folks.
Definitely hand in glove, as one of my old drama teachers used to say. Dael Kingsmill, speaking of drama teachers, what about, are you a drama teacher? I don't know, it's a theatre background. Anyway, go on.
At what point have I ever given you the impression that I could be a teacher?
You've lectured before.
Yeah,
you've done university lecturing.
I cannot be in charge of children. I just let them do what they want.
Teacher of all ages.
Teacher of all ages. No, I mean my initial thought was games like Stellaris or XCOM, which I love and which have sort of class-based elements that I think would translate really well to a TTRPG. But then the more I think about it, the more games like that, I think, rely on this very sort of high-level, top-down view. You are some person who is, sending troops in. And I think that a lot of what I love about TTRPGs over something like wargaming is that you are playing a specific individual character. And so for some reason, the answer that I've come to is Monster Prom. There are games out there, TTRPGs out there that would let you play something like Monster Prom, but I'd love to see a Monster Prom TTRPG. I think that'd be great.
I've been thinking for an interesting answer to this question, and nothing is coming to me. I keep wanting to be okay, here's my answer. I want a new Dragon Age RPG. I love the Green Ronin one, the one that became the generic Fantasy Age system. I loved it so much that as 5e was beginning to get started, I adapted one of its adventures to be 5e playtest compatible. The Amber Rage. It's a great adventure, actually. Really tense, good dark fantasy. I think you would like Amber Rage a lot, Ben. I think it's from an anthology called Blood and Ferelden or something like that. Awesome adventure anthology. Yeah, check it out. But I played the tabletop game before I ever played the Dragon Age games at all. Truly, there was a more than 5-year gap between me playing Dragon Age RPG and me playing Dragon Age Origins. I admit my memory might be a little faulty because of that time span, but I don't remember the tabletop game really having much to do at all mechanically with the way the Dragon Age Origin plays. There are some spells in common, like Walking Bomb always stood out in my mind because it's so gruesome and memorable. And, those spells are in the same system. But the gameplay of Dragon Age Origins feels very much like a single player MMO to me, with its hotbarred actions and stuff like that. And I like that, right? I like the gameplay of Dragon Age Origins a lot. So something very more 4E-ish, or do a draw steel adaptation of Dragon Age Origins with those spells and stuff. I think that would be really cool.
I think the draw steel system would be a fairly good match for...
The thing I'm curious about specifically with Dragon Age, because Dragon Age, and feel free to correct me, particularly Dael, because I know you're Dragon Age, you're the Dragon Age correspondent on this podcast.
I think James and I both. I don't know.
You definitely have more than me.
Is the way that magic works in Dragon Age. It always reminded me, as it did, I think, a number of people of like the warp from Warhammer 40k, where it is inherently dangerous to dip your mind into the weave because demons will prey upon you. And this is the reason that, you know, what are they called? Are they called the Templars in Dragon Age, or the Mage Hunter kind of
the Templars
group? You know, like, they're very justified in their hatred or caution, to put it kindly, of mages because of the inherent dangers of magic. Like, would that translate natively into Draw Steel? Because that feels like a really key part of that setting that I would want to see represented in the magical rules.
I think that would probably largely end up getting represented in the class-specific resource management. I know that when I did I need soft hands, gentle hands, and not too much judgment. I did rewrite the entire age system because I wanted to play the Dragon Age TTRPG, but I wasn't super happy with the system, so I just rewrote the whole thing. And in that, I built in a little sort of separate resource management system that mages had to deal with that was like a temptation system where it's like dip into it to get more, but it does increase the risk of having to interact with demons. So I don't think it's that hard to implement. And I think that Draw Steel is already kind of geared to that kind of asynchronous, drama-filled sort of thing.
Well, speaking of video games and tabletop RPGs, there's actually 2 pieces of video game tabletop RPG news this week. Let's jump to what's on the run sheet first, just because I have my notes all nicely collated, which is that Paizo is teaming up with Digital Extremes, who are the developers behind the quite popular online game Warframe, to create what they're calling at the moment Starfinder cross Warframe Operation Arias? It's probably Arias. Anyway, that's what they're calling it. So basically, they are making a adventure using the Starfinder system in the Warframe setting. If folks don't know Warframe, it's a action role-playing third-person shooter multiplayer online game, according to Wikipedia, but I would have just assumed it was a MMO. It launched in 2014. It's been going for like over 10 years now. So I always saw Warframe as kind of like a AA game instead of a AAA video game. I feel like that's maybe unfair to it for its popularity, but it's cool that they're making this in the Starfinder system.
It's fascinating.
It's a pretty good sort of story and world to translate, really.
Sure.
Like the little snippets of story that I know from conversations with my brother translate very well to the high drama but like character-driven storytelling that I would be looking for.
I have very limited experience with Warframe too, but I once had a friend of mine, a D&D player who is in the group I'm in, is obsessed with Warframe and had a lot to say about it and walked me through this one mission that involves like time travel and a New Year's celebration. And I got the lowdown on like how people become Warframes and like the humans behind it and the alien tech and the version of you from the past. And it was so dense. It felt like I was getting like Kingdom Hearts explained to me.
Sure. Okay.
And I say that with a positive connotation.
Okay.
Right. Because, you know, if that story is that dense and that rich and that character driven, it's going to create a culture of people who love to learn it. And it sounds like those people, there's a lot of tabletop RPG crossover with the type of people who get really involved in game lore like that, will be the perfect shepherds for new people from the TTRPG side to get into all of that.
Also, as someone who has had both Kingdom Hearts and Warframe explained at me, I think I get more about Warframe.
Yeah, I feel like your word choice are not explained to you, explained at you.
I stand by my word choice.
Should I get into Warframe? This is starting to sound like I should get into Warframe.
I actually think that you would really like Warframe. I think there's a lot that you would really like about it.
Yeah, okay. I always assumed Warframe was kind of not a clone of Destiny, but I assumed that it was like a studio trying to make a Destiny, but without the resources that Bungie necessarily had. So, which I don't mean derogatively or derisively, but just that was my assumption, I suppose. But if you like Starfinder, you can find out all about Warframe by checking out Operation Arias. It's just, to me, interesting to see, another tabletop RPG. If this was like Wizards of the Coast doing, I don't know, Pillars of Eternity, but it's 5e, I think we'd all be like, oh, goodness, this is such big news. This is going to get so many more people into Pillars of Eternity or so many more people into D&D. It's kind of cool to see them, like, again, to reuse this odd expression that's sticking in my brain, hand in glove for Starfinder to kind of take Warframe and cross-pollinate those two audiences in a really cool way. Is anybody familiar enough with Warframe and the Starfinder system to be able to say whether that is a good mechanical marriage or whether they're kind of crowbarring that a little bit? And that's why we're the number one tabletop RPG podcast in all the realms. You can't know them all, folks. Speaking of the next piece of news, Critical Role, just while I was asleep last night, have announced their video game. They are partnering with Ad Hoc Studios to create the first Exandria set video game. If you're not familiar with Ad Hoc Studios, I did a little bit of a deep dive this morning very quickly. Some of them, not all of them, but some among the team are ex-Telltale employees. Telltale, famously makers of the video games The Wolf Among Us, Tales of the Borderlands. They did a Game of Thrones one. They did Batman ones. They did The Walking Dead very famously. These very story-driven adventure games that were more about character choice and investigation than they were necessarily about, like, combat or game mechanics or that sort of thing. Definitely like not necessarily a AAA type Baldur's Gate experience. Telltale famously went out of business quite suddenly because they were doing a lot of licensed products and then just their licensing treadmill of sealing new deals began to fall through. There's entire YouTube videos about this you can go watch that will give you all the details. So it's good to see these developers getting back, having another go at it, getting back into the field. They have another game coming this year called Dispatch, which looks like it's a similar sort of like adventure style game where you're a dispatcher for superheroes.
Okay, Dispatch is so interesting.
I'm so excited for it. I've been following along.
I only heard of it very recently, but it like exploded like wildfire onto the scene. And it had something to do with, what was it? Was it at the Game Awards where with Laura Bailey and Aaron Paul showed up on stage together? Because they're both in that cast. And I feel like it felt like the world of Hollywood and the world of games were merging in a different way, right? Because people like Hideo Kojima have been doing that at the Game Awards forever, right? Death Stranding had Mads Mikkelsen and Guillermo del Toro, and like Kojima loves Hollywood people. But for someone other than a Kojima studio to do this, and in a way that didn't feel like it was a celebrity cameo to sort of get butts and seats the way that animated movies will have, and starring Will Smith and Zendaya as snowmen or whatever they do all the time. This game, because of its like Telltale pedigree, seems to have a lot of charm. And I love the way that it's a superhero game that's not an action game, right? You're the dispatchers. No. You're the people behind the desk, making sure that all the heroes can get out there. But most importantly, the cast of heroes aren't the Justice League. They're not the Avengers. They're more like, quote, a motley crew of dangerous f***ups. So sure. The news that Critical Role was working with this studio, when Critical Role often likens Vox Machina to that exact same phrasing, makes me feel like it's more than just the Laura Bailey connection. But there's sort of a simpatico style of storytelling, style of narrative deliverance that they want, and that these guys are the ones to do it.
Yeah, there's deep roots between Critical Role and Telltale. Laura Bailey, Travis Willingham, they've all been in... Travis was Harvey Dent in the Batman games.
Yeah, and was Laura Catwoman?
She might have been. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, those games are very voice actor heavy games because they're story-driven kind of narrative games. So it seems like a very natural marriage. Dispatch is scheduled for this year. There's a demo out on Steam. Some folks in the chat have been saying it's pretty good. I have not had a chance to check it out yet. There's no release date on Dispatch yet. And obviously, they've just announced the Critical Role game. They kind of alluded that it might be about 2 years away. But I will say, Wolf Among Us 2 is also supposed to be this studio. And we have not heard about that game in a hot minute. So, we'll see. Video games are hard. Video games are hard.
Video games are indeed hard.
Yeah, no, because Wolf Among Us is great. Tales of the Borderlands, I also think that's great. Skip the Game of Thrones one, that was kind of a bit crap. But my wife got hardcore into Fables after playing the Wolf Among Us because we were like, what is this based? This is such a cool idea. And it's basically a comic book where fairy tale characters and mythology characters all come to like New York City, I think it is, to live in the real world because something's collapsing like the fairy tale world or something. It's cool. It's really cool concept. How do we feel in terms of, I don't know if you folks remember the conversation we had maybe a month or two ago when Critical Role first kind of expressed that they were looking to possibly create a video game. I feel like we were pretty on the money in terms of what they'd end up on here.
Yep.
Cool. All right.
I'm a little surprised actually that there's not more of a like action focus. I guess we don't know anything yet. They could surprise us with a more action oriented game, right? Baldur's Gate 3 was huge, but the studio isn't known for that. A studio can surprise you, but
the press release already said that this was going to be in the flavor of Dispatch. Which was funny because all the comments that I read like to the article were like, please be open world exploration game. Please be open world exploration game. I'm like, whatever the opposite of what you're asking for is, that's what you're getting.
Please have reading skills. Please have reading skills. Yeah. Everyone wanted. All the people who love Baldur's Gate 3 wanted that, but Critical Role. But you can't just build a Larian Studios overnight. Larian Studios, right? The first Divine Divinity game was like 15, 20 years ago, right? They've got pedigree when it comes to that kind of game.
Well, that's what I feel like we called 2 months ago when we were first talking about this, was the idea that like they could not have been making a Baldur's Gate set in Exandria because we probably would have been hearing about it, or as Travis said in the interview that he gave, it would take 5-6 years before we would see anything of that game. Whereas they would prefer, especially for their first foray, you've kind of, I hope this doesn't sound again derisive because I don't intend it to, but you got to walk before you can run. And a game on the scale of something like Ad Hoc seem to be doing, it takes less time than necessarily, the years and years and years that it can take to flesh out an open world RPG like Baldur's Gate or The Witcher or Oblivion or something like that, Speaking of things to be excited for, just a quick shout out here. The Grim Hollow Player's Guide, the transformed Grim Hollow Player's Guide, has just been released in PDF form to backers of the Kickstarter. So it's finally getting out to folks in folks' hands. If you didn't back the Kickstarter, it is not too late to late pledge. And in fact, if you go and late pledge and add the player's guide to your pledge as a PDF product, as well as anything else you'd like to add it while you're there, you'll unlock it virtually immediately once you've gone through the backer kit. So it is accessible to anybody who wants it now. Feedback has been pretty positive. Shawn, have you been dipping in to see what folks are saying about it?
I have not, because I'm working on the campaign guide and some adventures. And I'm also working on, Ben, the organized play campaign, which is launching at Gen Con. And if you are interested in that organized play campaign, you can right now go to ghostfiregaming.com/resources. And there is a little section called the Grim Hunt. That is the name of our organized play campaign. And you can download the player's guide and the game master's guide for the rules, how to create a character, how to get involved in the campaign. All that information is now ready to go, and we'll be having our first players go through our stuff at Gen Con.
And can you build your character using the Grim Hollow Player's Guide?
You absolutely can, and that's why you might want to go get the official Grim Hollow Player's Guide transformed to use it to create the characters for the organized play campaign. But you can also use the standard Player's Handbook 2024 to all of those species, all of those classes, all of those backgrounds are also fine for the Grim Hunt campaign.
Dael, do you want to give with me a round of applause to these two? Because everything I've heard behind the scenes, this is so much damn work. Like, congratulations, you guys. That's awesome what you've done here.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We have seen the Ben at the end of a week of crunch multiple times on this podcast. you're a soldier for getting it done, because I know that feeling.
I appreciate that, and in the trenches with Shawn, Joe Rasso, Martin Hughes, Matt Domino. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. That's out there. Go grab it. It's sick. Speaking of getting into things and starting out as a new player, Heroes of the Borderlands, no, not the video game, Adventure from Wizards of the Coast, the starter set. Wizards of the Coast have given a few more details. They're boasting this will be D&D's biggest starter set ever made. We now have a price for it. We now know more of the physical components. I don't feel like there was anything that was mentioned in the recent news articles that we didn't already know about, but there's handouts and tokens and maps and magic items and spell cards and modular character sheets. There's a bit of a disagreement between Amazon and D&D Beyond as to whether there are 4 or 8 character sheets in there or modular kind of character cards, but I guess we'll find out. Buy it and find out, I guess. That's the risk you take. Is it worth the money?
How much is the money?
The money is, for the physical edition, $49.99 USD, which is more than twice the starter set that was Lost Mines of Phandelver. However, the large kind of number of physical components, this looking much more like a board game than necessarily a tabletop RPG, just going by the components, maybe justifies that price. I think that's honestly pretty reasonable for what you get in the box. There is a digital edition that is only $14.99 USD, which in addition to is basically, I think if you're getting just the D&D Beyond version, it's the adventure, but you get some of the physical components as digital assets that you can use in like D&D Beyond maps, which are, that's cool. And there is also a physical digital bundle if you want to do both. Although for such a physical product, I'm not sure why you would, but that is $54.99.
Michael
USD.
in chat is saying the Holmes basic set was $9.50 in 1977, which is $53 today. You're getting much more for your money with this. We got chits instead of dice, which is just a really funny thing to think of, pulling like chits out of a bag, I guess, to randomize a number.
Some board games do that.
My uncle was in the Marines in the 80s or 90s, I don't recall. And in U.S. Armed Forces, dice are contraband. You can't gamble in the armed forces. So in order to play D&D, prisons. He and his squad mates or whatever they were did. Like they made their own chits because they literally could not use dice.
I think we're in an interesting era where we are shifting slightly more towards maximalist TTRPGs. I don't think that that's necessarily 100% of what's going on here. I think also just gearing something more to look like a board game is a great way of bringing new players in, because that is a prime demographic to target. If you want new players to come to the game, fresh people, but people who are likely to come to the game, board gamers. Those are the people to aim for. So I think that that's, a huge aspect of what's going on. But I don't think that it is unaware as a product of certain rival TTRPGs, which have a lot more physical components and cards to work with and, modular character sheets and things like that. But it's what's that other game? There was a TTRPG not that long ago that has been described as maximalist that's like wizards meet for like what is it what's his face from Sit Down and Shut Up, who now focuses on TTRPGs. Quinn's Quest talked about it a bunch, but it's just like so maximalist in terms of all the handouts and bits and bobs that are tactile that you touch the whole way through. And I do sort of see this trend that we're moving slightly towards, where it's like just a bunch of stuff. Have just a bunch of stuff in the box and at the table, which is just interesting to see for games that for the longest time have been thought of as pen and paper games.
Well, the thing about lots of stuff is that, yes, it's maximalist, and yes, you can charge more, and yes, board games are more familiar with it, but it's also a good teaching component. It's easier to teach the game if you can move this away so it's no longer in front of your mind, and put this in its place so you can see what you actually need to know at that particular instance of the game. There's a lot that goes into that, and hopefully I'm holding off on any decisions about whether it's good or not until I see how these components work together. But it gives me hope that this starter set may actually be one that teaches people how to play the game and how to run the game, as opposed to a pen and paper in a box that you need to read and then understand So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how all this works together.
That a starter set that teaches you how to play. Shawn, did you recently work on a D&D adventure for a young audience that used sort of tactile components like this?
Yes and no. I have worked on a couple of different products, but they're not tactile because they were only provided digitally as either PDFs in the first case or on D&D Beyond in the second case.
I was imagining there was like a printout sheet of cards that you could print out at home and cut up, but I must be crossing that memory with something else.
Yeah. No, I wish I could have done that, but that's not what the RPG gods brought down. But I've been super interested in this topic for years, obviously, teaching and getting new players, not your typical RPG players, into RPG spaces. So we'll see how it goes.
Fingers crossed it's successful. I do think that the game that I was talking about before is called the 7-Part Pact. I think that's the one. It's like 7 wizards who are holding together reality.
The Possum Creek one. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, as someone who learns board games by opening the box, opening the first few pages of the board game and setting it up. Like, I don't read the rest of the rule book. I have to set up the board game because I have to see it kind of physically in front of me. And then as I read through the rules, I can be like, oh, I know what you're talking about because that's the deck right there, or these are the tokens I need here. I think that, I don't know this is the way it sets up, but they're describing it as having a quick start, kind of let's start playing in minutes guide. And if that's the setup in terms of like, all right, let's just set up an encounter, lay out this map, put out these tokens, choose a character, lay these cards on your character card, because it's not really a character sheet. I was misspeaking before. And like, here's the first encounter, let's go. I think that's going to be very accessible for board gamers, but also just people who learn through tactile kind of interacting with things and can visually see what's going on, as opposed to like reading a book and being like, okay, I guess I'd choose, let me read out 7 options to you and pick one of them. And it's like, what was the third one again? It can be difficult for some folks. So.
There was an Onion headline, board game teaching turns into hostage situation. and you could put TTRPG teaching turns just as easily. And so the trick would be to get past that to the point where the play is actually fun rather than a hostage situation.
One night, my friends tried to teach me to play Arkham Horror, and that's exactly how it felt.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I've told this story before, but a mate of mine and I were setting up to play, I think it was Infinity, which is a war game, and we were trying to figure it out, and a lot of it was just us standing there, like reading the book and talking, oh, I think I get this because that guy's standing there or whatever, and it was going on like this for an hour and a half, and my wife, who was sitting on the couch in the other room, like reading a book or watching TV or something, just kind of shouts, is it fun yet? Because she was hearing us. And so every time we're learning to play a board game, I'm just anticipating her shouting that from the other room.
Well, if you're a real board game nerd, you got to find the fun in all of that nonsense before you play.
There's a digital edition on D&D Beyond. The release date is September 16th. Go check it out. Speaking of starter sets, this is where we're going to go off script a little bit again, because another piece of news dropped just this morning. Stranger Things Dungeons and Dragons game coming. They're doing another kind of box set, it looks like, similar to one they did a good couple of years ago now, where it was like Will's Adventure, and it was a little starter box that came with a Demigorgon miniature. Not the Demigorgon from D&D, but the flowerhead Demigorgon from Stranger Things. They're doing another one of those. This one is Eddie Munson themed. So you will play Eddie Munson's adventure from season 4, I suppose, of Stranger Things, if I'm reading this article correctly, which I'm doing off the cuff. Shawn, you might know more details about this because you shared the article with us.
I got as far as copying the link and putting it in chat.
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't think we know a lot about it yet, other than the fact that it's going to be out. And
sure,
there were a lot of words thrown into the article that seem to highlight D&D's place in Stranger Things, which, as someone pointed out rightfully, in the first 3 seasons was about 90 seconds worth of content. Yeah, other than a few, this initial scene with them playing D&D, and the one character, I think it was Will, who kept saying, "Can we play D&D tonight?" Or when can we play D&D again? Their D&D wasn't very much highlighted, as opposed to season 4, when we see Eddie Munson running the game. I think there's been an effort to capitalize on that for sure. I know that Justice Arman was one who was quoted in the article, which gives me hope that the D&D design team actually got to design something rather than having it be a one-off that somebody who really wasn't hooked into the zeitgeist of D&D at the moment knew about. So more on it as we learn more.
Yeah, looking at this article, it looks pretty, like it is a box. It looks like it's got lots of handouts, character sheets, little standee tokens for each of the characters. So it's kind of going, it doesn't look as intensive as the starter set, the Heroes of the Borderlands starter set. It also looks probably geared a little bit more towards like experienced D&D players, potentially, rather than specifically being a starter set. I'm curious what you just said, Shawn, is because it doesn't seem entirely clear to me. Is this a Wizards of the Coast product that is like a co-license with Stranger Things, or did somebody else make this product and license D&D from Wizards of the Coast? That's
as much as Justice is quoted, I would assume that Wizards had a close relationship with whoever created it if they did not themselves.
One thing worth noting is that previous Stranger Things box set, the Will's Adventure one, we might have even talked about this when it came out, is that it was not made by Wizards of the Coast. It was made by Hasbro Games, which is a division I have heard of only once then and never again, but may well still exist. I don't know, man. Like, I'll be so real with you. I didn't like the last Stranger Things box set at all. It didn't mesh with my conception of the story of Stranger Things, didn't satisfy me from a D&D perspective. This article poses something very interesting. Something Justice says is, and it will help encourage people create their own Hellfire clubs, which is a D&D club in Stranger Things. It's entirely possible that's just sort of like marketing, because of course, if you play the game, you are making a D&D group. But there's a certain optimistic part of me that has this like, ooh, is there going to be some kind of like community building element to the game box? Maybe that's an optimistic ask of me.
I could do you one better on the controversial statements, James. I am one of the very small seeming group of people who didn't really like Eddie Munson. I know. But I'm happy they're getting a game. I don't know why. To me, it really just reads as a board game that is styled to look like D&D more than a starter set that would convert people. I mean, I just could straight up be wrong on that. I don't know.
There's no word that I saw in the article, and again, we all had to skim it before coming in here. It doesn't look like there's any word on a release date for this box. But season 5 of Stranger Things is coming in end of this year, I believe. Like November, December is the release date for that. So cross fingers they managed to actually line something up here and get it out while there's kind of prime excitement. They might be a season late, but at least everybody has the familiarity and the fondness of Eddie Munson already established as we come into season 5. Whether Eddie Munson will be in season 5 is an open question, but...
Is it an open question?
Well, the actor's been like in a million other things, hasn't he?
But the character, though.
Spoiler alert.
I mean, spoiler alert, Ben, but he got eaten by demon bats. I don't know.
I know, but there's a lot of fan theories about like...
Here's the thing, right?
Is he going to be resurrected? Is he going to be a new Vecna-looking dude? Is he,
One thing that I heard right as the season came out, one of these fan theories, so don't put too much stock in it, is that obviously they didn't expect Joseph Quinn to be the sort of beloved breakout star that he was. And so, they planned for him to die. They do this in every season of Stranger Things, right? Shawn Astin character dead within the season. Yeah. All of these, below, it's part of the Stranger Things formula, have a lovable side character who gets brutally murdered in a dramatic way at the very end. But if Stranger Things really wants to do something interesting with D&D, which I'm under no delusions that they are, what they could do is bring him back as Cass, the undead betrayer of Vecna.
That'd be fun.
I do remember this fan theory.
It won't happen, but it would be cool.
Eberron, Forge of the Artificer is unfortunately delayed, but you'll be able to get it hopefully in time for Stranger Things because it's delayed till December 9th, 2025. If you have already pre-ordered it, Wizards of the Coast are offering a kind of make good to folks. Anybody who has pre-ordered the book, I think, up until the delay, let's just say, as in like the announcement of when it was delayed, not necessarily after, will receive an Eberron mini adventure when they receive their book. Interestingly to me, this mini adventure, if you pre-ordered the digital version, you will get a digital copy of the mini adventure. If you pre-ordered a physical version, particularly through a Wizards Play Network store, which is like a participating store in Wizards Play Network, you'll receive a physical print of the mini adventure, which I think is kind of cool. It does say whilst supplies last, so whether that will get around to everybody, but sad news, but good news for everyone who pre-ordered, I guess.
We need to be clear why it's delayed, I think.
Yes.
That might be a little bit of important news.
Yes.
It's because they got the sample copies and the binding started to bend almost immediately. That's not good. And they tried to figure out, according to their email, they tried to figure out what to do. They thought about different solutions, and then they said, you know what, we're not going to risk it. So they just sent them all back, and they're reprinting all of them. Hopefully the new printing won't have binding problems or print problems or anything like that. Otherwise, there will be more delays and more mini adventures that will have to go out.
You only like season 3.
Okay, that was for chat. That was for
3.
chat. That wasn't for you. I would have said it out loud if it was for you, Ben. Season 3 is the best season. It's the only season I truly love.
Okay. Jeez.
Now respond to what Shawn said.
Thank you, Shawn, for doing actual news. 2 quick follow-ups here. Diamond bankruptcy, we talked about this 2 weeks ago. They had a whole swath of stock on consignment. Diamond, for folks who, if this is your first episode of the Lorecast, used to distribute predominantly comic books, but also gaming supplies like tabletop RPG books. They are a distributor that has gone bankrupt. I think late last year was when they first filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They currently have stock on consignment, which means that publisher gives stock to a distributor. The distributor doesn't pay for the stock. They have it on consignment. And then when they sell it through to a game shop, then both the publisher and the distributor share in the profits. However, because Diamond are bankrupt and going under, they are trying to keep the consignment stock and sell it to pay back their copious amounts of debts, which does not, I mean, they do owe the publishers, but that is not what they're going to use the money that they're hoping to make from selling the stock from. So tabletop RPG publishers are trying to get their stock back from Diamond. And to that effect, Green Ronin at the moment has started a GoFundMe to help pay for their legal bills to try to get back their stock from Diamond. They're in a position they feel they need to do this. They have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stock with Diamond at the moment. And, you know, Gen Con's just around the corner, which is an expensive thing for publishers to be able to attend, let alone, you know, be able to make money from. So they're in a tough spot. They are not the only publisher, to my understanding, that is trying to take legal action to get their stock back.
It just doesn't seem legal that Diamond should be able to do that. I'm sure there's some kind of Byzantine law in the books that makes it possible, but it to the layman truly just seems like they're committing theft.
It's bankruptcy law. I don't know what to tell you.
Also, what's that old, not necessarily accurate statement that possession is 9/10 of the law?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think the issue, since it's bankruptcy and it's not fair, but they want to be able to pay off the most powerful, most connected to power groups first. So that's why if it's taking money from the lesser and giving to the more powerful, then it's A-okay in the US system. And that's where we're at.
The old reverse Robin Hood.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I think that's also the case. And look, none of us are bankruptcy lawyers, so don't quote any of us here.
That's what
I've been bankrupt a few times, though. Yeah. Does that count?
All right. James and Shawn are bankruptcy lawyers, like Dael's a drama teacher. But yeah, my understanding, I mean, you know, you go bankrupt because you don't have the money to pay everybody you owe money to. And typically once a company has to start paying back money, my understanding, my very loose understanding is the order of importance gets kind of created, and often who you owe the most money to, or as Shawn says, the most powerful debtors are the ones that the company has to prioritize in terms of who they're paying back, which often means that the little guys, sometimes, I've been in this situation before myself, not that I've gone bankrupt, but I have been owed money by a company. I'm not going to name names. It was not in the tabletop RPG industry, just to be clear. And yeah, the staff were like the last people who were going to be paid wages because there were much bigger companies that needed to be paid back. So yeah, it sucks, unequivocally. It is the way the wind blows. But good luck to those companies, and hopefully they, because it is a significant financial threat to them, they managed to eke out a win here. And speaking of eking out a win, just again following up on a story from 2 weeks ago, Draughts is a collection of London board game cafes. The staff had been threatening strike action over fixed-hour contracts, wanting to, rather than 0-hour contracts, which they were currently under, minimum 24-hour notice of shift changes. Rosters published minimum 3 weeks notice, on-site security after 7 p.m. at one of the Draughts cafes. These were just some of the demands that a union were asking. They have since voted unanimously to strike and did their first demonstration, a rally outside the Waterloo location on July 14th. There was a police presence there, but my understanding was that the police kind of showed up, saw that it was a peaceful protest, and then departed. Yeah, so I don't know. We'll keep an eye on that, but good luck to the workers.
Hopefully. Hell yeah. Support the strikers. Don't cross your picket line.
I don't think what they're asking for is unreasonable either, to at least begin discussions and negotiations. Those are 2 quick follow-ups, but that's not all the news this week, because we have one more piece of news. D&D Dungeon Master University is opening for tuition. This is from the D&D in a Castle folks, which I believe the company is called like Gaming Vacations or something like that. Someone correct me if they know. But the D&D in a Castle folks are launching a new program, a 2-day, in their words, symposium, which will cover 4 learning tracks. From what I could understand, this was going to kind of be like a conference, so there would be different talks going on at different times, and you could attend different talks depending upon your kind of personal interests in over the 2-day summit, if you will. It looks cool. It looks like it could be fun. They've definitely pulled in some luminaries in the tabletop RPG industry. The faculty, again in their words, B. Dave Walters, Amanda
Do keep
Hammond.
in mind that they are teachers the way that... No, sorry. Sorry, go ahead.
No. That's Amanda Hammond, who's, as far as we know, is still on the D&D team. Keith Baker, Clint McElroy, Elisa Teague, among others, are on the teaching faculty. Does this look interesting? Does anybody here feel like they need to go to Dungeon Master University to learn more about being a dungeon master?
Shawn is Dungeon Master University.
Let it be said, I'm fascinated to see Clint McElroy on that list. I love Clint McElroy. Dael and I played D&D with Clint McElroy in 2019.
Delightful person.
Yeah, great dude. Great radio personality. Great podcaster. I'm not convinced he knows how to play D&D, given the way that the McElroys play D&D on TAS. Like, that's not the point of their game. The fact of the matter is, all these people like Elisa Teague, fine designer, good producer, her specialty, right? She is credited in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything for the section in that book about puzzles. Right, Elisa Teague is a puzzle designer. She's done work with Lone Shark Games, Mike Sellinker's company, among other stuff. All of these people have different aspects of the RPG playing experience that I think are really fun and useful. But for something like this, there's a certain level of like brass tacks that doesn't really seem to be covered. If you think of this as a DMing, 0 to hero masterclass. And I think it's a change in perspective is what you need, especially when you look at the cost of this, right, Ben? What's the cost of this weekend getaway?
It starts at $995 USD, but it can get as expensive as $2,250 USD. I believe those are both 2-day packages, and there are some extra inclusions, meals and food. I believe maybe a hotel stay is included on there. If you Google it, you'll see all the inclusions. But nevertheless, this is very expensive. Like this is a planned vacation kind of level of cost.
That's the thing. I do not think of this as an educational opportunity. Think of this as a vacation where you get to hang out with some of your favorite D&D celebs.
Themed seminar-styled vacation.
Yeah.
This is the thing, though. This is the question I had, is who is this for? Because I agree with you entirely, except that the way they are selling this seems to have a foot in both tracks, right? Because the learning tracks are skill building, dynamic encounters, manage player behavior, sharpen improvisational skills. Great.
Which I wonder whether Clint's going to be attached to sharpen improvisational skills. That's my theory. Anyway.
I buy it.
But yeah, no, looking at that, Ben, I think what it comes down to in my estimations is that D&D in a castle is for a very particular type of person who loves D&D, loves playing D&D, and likes to spend a bunch of their money on let's go and let's play D&D with these people in this place doing this thing. I think this is for people who genuinely think of themselves and enjoy being a dungeon master, not a player. And I think that part of that mindset is framed around that idea of honing these skills. So
right. But
if I was to put a name to it, I would just label it as being like, yeah, but the vacation is that you brand yourself as someone who is learning. Like,
yeah. But let me get to the end of these, because it's the last one in particular that I find interesting. Like skill building, campaign building, world building, all fun skills for a game master to have. Career building is the fourth one.
Oh, yeah.
Explore the business of DMing with advice from pro DMs, streamers, writers, and content creators. And one of the faculty is Hunter Fell, who does a lot of DMing, my understanding is, with Start Playing, which is the pro DM platform where you can go and offer your services as a paid DM. So is it selling itself as a paid vacation, or is it selling itself as offering people like a career path?
Okay, so you know VidCon, right? The YouTube convention.
Sure.
That then at some point got broadened to be more than YouTube, but then, I don't know, it had a weird journey. But there's always a sort of middle ground sort of tier of ticket available that's like, you're a professional, but you're not big enough that we're inviting you to this thing. So you're just paying a higher price ticket to get in there, and it's doing that same thing where it's selling you the idea of access to these professionals who will teach you things, and maybe a networking space where you can talk to other people who are in the same situation as you. Which I think, for me, VidCon similarly has always sat in that same bizarre middle ground of being kind of a seminar, kind of a vacation. To me, that makes sense, but I kind of agree that from the outside, what is it? Like, is it real? What is it?
There are different ways to learn, and generally the best way to learn is through experience. The best way to become the best dungeon master you can is by dungeon mastering all the time for many different players in many different systems, using many different stories and many different genres, and doing all of it. You can learn things by being told rather than experience. It gives you a shortcut. You don't have to make all the mistakes. You can only make half of the mistakes. But there still needs to be that experiential side as well. In terms of what this is, I tend to look at it like that. I tend to look at it as, hopefully the people who are, what are they called? The faculty will be able to impart some wisdom and provide people with the knowledge that they need to go off and get that experience a little bit more easily than they would otherwise. Don't make all the mistakes that game masters make. Here are some shortcuts. Here are some but is it going to be, oh, I took this class and now I have a degree on my wall and I am a professional dungeon master? No. That's not how this type of education works.
I also think that it's going to be interesting, and this ties into what Ben is saying here, where it's how do you ensure that you are going to provide a satisfying experience for people who've paid quite a lot of money to be there when you are pitching yourself somewhere in between? Because some people are going to want to be there to learn and to find out those shortcuts, and they're not going to be satisfied unless they walk away with that wisdom. And other people are going to be dissatisfied if they don't just have a fun, good time. And you can provide, both of those things, more than one thing at once. But I think by kind of straddling between vacation and seminar, which I maintain, I think they are doing, I think you do put yourself in a tricky position where you have to try to appease everybody who has paid to be there.
Yeah, that's because I agree with you. I think that it's sitting somewhere in between, and I'm sure there's many, many valuable things. I think one good thing about education over experience, as Shawn was sort of talking about as well, is like having a barometer for what you're doing. Because I think if you have a lot of experience but ingrained learned bad habits that someone hasn't kind of mentioned to you, hey, maybe you should change how you're doing this thing, that can that's where education can be useful in that way. Maybe you don't realize you're making encounters too hard, or maybe you don't realize that you're making NPCs overly hostile, or whatever it happens to be. But that's the thing, is like, if I go and I expect to have a fun vacation weekend, but actually it's quite dry and boring, I think I'd be disappointed. But if I go and I'm like, this is the start of my professional GM career, this is where I'm going to get on YouTube and start making actual plays, and here we go, and you don't walk away feeling like you've got a starting point for that, you'll be disappointed. So I think straddling the line is what they're trying to do, but I think it's a really tricky line for them to straddle, and I think they should be really clear in what people should expect. Maybe that's communicated through, because like I said, there are 3 tiers of like cost. Maybe that's communicated a little bit through those 3 tiers in terms of what you get. Maybe there are additional benefits to the higher cost tiers that might provide you more of one or the other. But in the past, at some conventions, I've had workshops where we limit the number of people. They turn in before the convention an adventure or some content, which is then shared with the other people who are going to be participating, and everyone gets to read it over, and then you get to discuss it as a group. And I'm doing that again at a convention called PAGE, Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo, in January. We're going to do it on adventure design. And, hopefully that's the point, right? It's everybody gets to look at everyone else's work, and we get to discuss, is this the strongest way to present an adventure? Is this helpful to a DM to have it laid out this way versus this way? Are there things that everyone else who has DM'd would read this and go, oh, I don't want to play this, or this is going to be harder for this reason? And that's the sort of education that can be useful, but it really takes a limited number of people who get that sort of attention and get their work looked at. Maybe they can do that with this in some way, but it'll be interesting to see how it goes and when we hear feedback from people who attended. Yeah, I'd be fascinated. Podcast at ghostfiregaming.com if anybody ends up going. This is not just so folks are aware. If you are interested, the dates are January 2nd and 3rd, 2026. So it's still a while away. And they do say spots are limited. I don't know if bookings are currently open or it's just kind of information is out there. But yeah, if you just Google D&D Dungeon Master University and maybe D&D in a castle, you'll find it pretty easily.
I'm still really curious about this, right? I feel like we've been kind of negative on this segment, but my feelings towards it aren't like negative. They're curious and cautious, just mostly because of the cost involved, right? Who will this be worth it to? And that's been the bulk of the conversation here. But, if you're one of those rare people who have the disposable income to do this, and, if you're the kind of person who goes to the JoCo cruise, right, or D3 at Sea, these sort of big nerd events where a lot of the draw is going somewhere cool and kind of hanging out with big nerd influencers, I don't think that this is a bad idea, right? It gets to even feel a little bit productive. I think if you go to this and you take back even a modicum of improved GMing experience from the situation, if that's the sort of disposable income you have, that's a win.
I think we're just going to, as this moves forward, we're going to learn a lot of valuable things about what people value. That's all.
I didn't intend the tone of this segment to feel like negative or cynical or critical of the program or those involved at all. I just hope people know what they want going in. And because the Witcher school in Poland sounds sick as hell. I would love to go and do a weekend where I learn to become a Witcher, but I'm under no illusions that's the start of my career as a new Witcher. I'm not going to go around starting to slay monsters after the fact.
That's what you think, Ben. Yeah. The Trial of the Grasses comes at the very end.
Oh, man. Look. Someone who is not surviving the Trial of the Grasses is this guy. You need a strong heart to survive the Trial of the Grasses. This dude is not doing it. Anyway, speaking of surviving the Trial of the Grasses, you have just survived another episode of the Eldritch Lorecast. If you want to survive another trial, we will be back next week for our 200th episode.
200!
Everyone's excited. I have no idea what we're doing for it, but I'll think of something between now and then. But you can join us live on Twitch for the 200th episode at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Pacific on a Monday. It is 9 a.m. Tuesday if you're in Australia, on the eastern coast of Australia, I should say. We're a big island. Or you can catch us on YouTube. You can catch us on Twitch if you can't make, I just said Twitch, Spotify, anywhere good podcasts are found. You'll find the number one tabletop RPG podcast in all the realms. I've been Ben Byrne here with Dael Kingsmill, Shawn Merwin, James Hake. And we will be back next week with the 200th episode of the Eldritch Lorecast. Ba-da-da, ba-da-da, ba-da-da. Ba-da-da-ba.
Excellent. Ba-da-ba.
I'm feeling
I
high.
really enjoyed that ba-da-ba.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think as we've learned in this episode, I don't take compliments well. I don't know what to do with them, but I appreciate that.
It's turned you into a mime.
I'm just stuck in a glass box of emotions. I don't know
Stuck in a glass ba-da-da.
Yeah. Ba-ba.